Good afternoon, everyone. For the early arrivals, welcome. Great to have you here. We're going to take the next 30 seconds or so and allow people to join us. But if you've already logged on, great to have you here. Looking forward to a great session with you. Welcome on again. We are actually, you know what? Let me invite Gabrielle on the stage. Gabrielle kind of organizes and runs Beehive and our entire higher ed community. So, Gabrielle, come give people some instructions on how to get going as some other people join us.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're so happy to have you here, as Joe mentioned before. To get started, I just wanted to go through a couple of logistical things. So the first thing is you are welcome to use the chat. If you haven't used StreamYard before, on the right-hand side, I'm going to go ahead and type a message in here. Drop where you are from. So you can go ahead, put either your town or your institution, whatever you feel more comfortable with. We'd love to know where everyone's tuning in from. So you can feel free to interact on there. We welcome you to come up on the stage as well to have a conversation with the crew over here. We do want this to be super interactive and have you involved. So if you'd like to come up on stage, please mention in the chat that you'd like to come on. Currently, there is no way for you all to request to come on stage. And there is also a stream going on right now on LinkedIn and on YouTube. So for those of you who are tuning in from LinkedIn, if you'd like to get on the stage, you can also let me know through that chat as well, the comments on LinkedIn, and I can give you the link for StreamYard to be able to come in and use the platform here to join us on the stage. So I think that's it. And as always, let's keep it super respectful. We're here to challenge each other, to learn and to grow. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Gabrielle. So everyone, again, my name is Joe. I'm one of the partners here at Beyond. Today's session is in partnership with Higher Education User Group, HUG. And we're focusing on the topic of AI, not because there's any shortage of people with opinions on AI and sessions on AI and workshops on AI, but just so we can have a conversation with you about it. So we're going to start by giving you some of our perspective, some of the things we're seeing, some of the things we're working on, and just use that as fodder to get kind of the wheels spinning for you, and then invite you to engage both in the chat or even come on stage and talk with us, so that before we finish up today, it's not just been our voice, it's been your voice that's heard. And because we kind of always say your voice matters, right? So with that said, I'm going to invite Fred to join us. Fred is part of our team. He's been part of the early days of Beyond, and really his role at Beyond is to think emerging technologies. He's our blockchain guy. He's our AI guy. Not that Fred sits there and codes anything, but he really understands the strategy behind it, because he's sat on your side of the table. He's run technology offices in higher education. He then went and worked for the big vendors and saw their perspective on higher ed technology, and then is now with us on the consulting side. So really kind of has this multidimensional view of all the pieces that have to come together for technology to work on a campus. So because Fred has a deep passion for it, Fred and I do a podcast every week. I call it Fridays with Freddie. If you've been listening to it, great. If not, love for you to join in and just listen in. We try and keep the episodes to 10 to 13 minutes, so you can get this in quick bite-sized chews every single Friday. Sometimes we post it on a Saturday, but you can grab that YouTube channel and just follow along. So a lot of what we're going to talk about today, just to set the stage with you, comes from some of our discussions. But Fred, one thing I know about you is every single day you're finding something new, right, on AI, or something that blows your mind, something that catches your attention. So as of today, what's the big thing you found? And then I'll get into our conversation for the day.
Hey, Joe. Hi, everyone. And by the way, thank you for that introduction, because yes, I do have the privilege to be kicking the tires on a lot of technology. So on a daily basis, I kind of, I'm subscribe to a lot of AI newsletters and innovation newsletters. So I always get little nuggets. So today, but because you said we do a podcast together, we have several podcasts. Mondays with Matt, Fridays with Freddie. I was playing around with Google Notebook. It's still in the experimental phase, the beta phase, and it allows you to create projects, upload collateral, upload materials. But here's the crazy thing, Joe. One of the options is to create a podcast of your document. So this morning I did that. I did literally that. I took a very boring document on AI
Don't tell
unblocked.
Matt that.
No,
Yeah.
no, of course. Um, very boring document, 300 pages, 400 pages, and it created a 20-minute podcast out of it. With the voices were very realistic, great intonation, great deep voice, one female, one male. It was amazing. So that
So it
one
wasn't
actually
just
blew.
reading the transcription of the 300 pages. It understood it, interpreted it, and built a podcast out of it
Correct.
on the fly.
Yes. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah.
Okay.
It was really amazing.
Well, so everyone, that's AI today, right? And here we are thinking, how does this impact our jobs in higher education? Whether you're a project manager or a business analyst or a CIO or a functional leader in the organization, this thing, it's coming in, it's coming fast. The use cases are everywhere. So, Fred, would you mind give us as we prepare people's minds, right? Everyone's been in their office, they've been replying to emails all day, they've been dealing with meetings. Let's get them tuned into this AI conversation by you giving us kind of let's call it a state of the union, right? When you put your higher education lens on and you look at AI, what are some things that come top of mind for you? And then I want to talk to you about what should schools be working on and thinking about right now before we open it up to the audience.
I mean, I think everybody now in the last 2 years has been inundated with large language models, generative AI, and it's going to change the world. And, obviously the early adopters and even the early adopters on your own campuses, you have faculty members, students jumped on it almost immediately. Obviously, faculty members jumped on it. Some schools are doing some very interesting experiments, are actually far ahead of what I would consider the market. And I would encourage people, for example, to once you start to educate yourself on this, take a look at a school like ASU, Arizona State University, who has an actual official partnership with OpenAI, and they're doing some great stuff. Like I said, if you go to their website, you're going to find a wealth of information. Another school, UC San Diego, same. They're actually building their own large language model using Meta Llama. So what we're seeing is we already see the early adopters and and quite frankly the well-funded schools that are taking a lead in this. Yeah. But in general, I would say on the academic side, I think there's many schools that are not only wrestling with this, but trying to get ahead of it and trying to say, hey, how can this help my teaching and learning? And for the student, how can this help my studying? For example, again, going back to the Google Notebook example, once you uploaded the document, it immediately gave you 5 options of, hey, you want to create an executive summary, you want to create an FAQ, you want to create study materials, and that's straight out of the box. So the first thing that I was thinking about was, but wait, aren't there vendors out there that provide smart textbooks and that built these over?
They want to charge huge license fees for it, blah, blah, blah.
Sure. Yeah. And I'm not saying it's going to be the one-to-one comparison, but it's going pretty fast. I think that's the main point I'm trying to say. So the state of the union is it's going fast, and in higher education, we see some early adopters or early innovators. But I think that everybody at this point should be thinking about what is the impact of Gen AI on my department, on my own job, on my institution, and quite frankly, what is it going to mean for learning from K to 12 into higher education over the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years.
Yeah, in yesterday's podcast, I think you mentioned to me that any school that's in the procurement cycle of thinking about buying some sort of technology, right, whether it's a point solution or a big SIS or CRM, whatever, almost has to stop and rethink it through the lens of AI and how fast AI is moving, right? And your point was a year or two, you have to think 2 years out and go, if AI has moved this fast in a year and a half, let's say, I mean, it's been around forever, but it's kind of like we've all been talking about it for a year and a half. Imagine where it'll be in 2 years. And this purchase I'm about to make, how realistic or valid will it be in 2 years, right? Okay, so Fred,
correct.
What should schools be doing? Like, let's look at it at a school level. What are some things schools should be doing? What stage should they be in as it relates to AI today?
So let me bracket this by saying that most schools have experience on how to deal with technology.
Sure.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
every school, if you look at the IT department, for example, or academic department, when it comes to academic learning technologies, you have experience in how to look at what your organization needs, and you have some type of governance, you have some type of insight that you need in, okay, what tool will work best, and then how do I manage that tool? So you have that framework, but with AI, some of it is going to work. Some of it you're going to need to figure out because it's a completely new animal, right? So the way I look at it is, I think number one, if you're starting from zero, just start educating yourself. What is generative AI? How does it work? How does generative AI work, for example? Well, we know it works with a lot of general information, but how would it work with domain specific or private information, proprietary information that the university has? Well, there's a tool for that that's called RAG. Well, RAG has particular architectural components in that as well. So everything that I'm saying right now, this is you can figure this out by yourself. You could go to YouTube. The great thing about YouTube today is that there's 1,000 people that are actually posting videos on this is what LLMs are, this is what RAG is. Brian Alexander has a wonderful podcast about on higher education. He's dealt pretty extensively with AI. So I think number one, educate yourself.
Okay.
Number two, if you're a leader in your organization, start thinking about what will the impact be on my department and on my team. And I think then you should start to formalize it a little bit, right? Okay, as an organization, how are we going to learn about this?
Okay. And then
where
does, and is that about when the governance piece comes in of, okay, how are we going to treat AI? Like, where does it fit? Is it something we're trying to protect against? Is it something we're looking to embrace, or is it something in between? Are we more interested in the learning environment where AI could get involved? What about the back office enterprise? What about the student experience, right? You can't do it all
right
at the same time. So like maybe even prioritizing what's more important and what's more tied to our strategic priorities as an institution.
I think, yeah, you know what? I think you bring up an excellent point. So as part of you educating yourself, I think one of the first deliverables that you need to have as an organization, you're 100% right, is, since it's fairly easy access, I mean, anybody can kind of start playing around with OpenAI and Claude or Llama, et cetera, right? You need some rules around that in your organization. So I think you're 100% right. Work on a governance document. Now, the good news is that we in one of our podcasts, we actually experimented with that. And we said, look, here's the power of generative AI. If you're an organization that wants to have a governance process around AI, why don't you ask AI? Right. So we asked AI and we fed it documents from the OECD, from NIST, which is a standards and security organization here in the United States. Some examples from other schools and say, hey, create a framework, a governance framework that somebody can look at and go like, okay, at least I know here are the 4, 5, 6 steps that I need to follow. I need to look at.
Fred, I'll find that document that you built in AI and I'll post the link through Gabrielle on this session so everyone has it. Right? It's just a great cheat sheet. It's a great starting point to have the conversation.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. But I think to your point, it's very important at this point to start thinking about that and start having something and disseminating that to your organization so that people know, hey, I can't just go and upload all my HR documents into OpenAI to make my life easier, right? So.
Yeah, and William, who's on, I just saw his note flash up. He's kind of leading directly into one of the conversations I wanted to have with you as we get ready to open it up to our audience. Is some of the use cases, right? These aren't just a bunch of IT use cases. There's real life use cases outside of IT that all of us could be looking at or considering. So I want to, but before I get to that, do you have a tip on how schools and leaders can evaluate what part of AI to go after? In other words, should we be going after the big stuff, the bleeding edge stuff? Are there simpler things? But how do I even evaluate the smorgasbord of AI that's coming down the pike?
Yeah, I could share a pretty interesting, AI project evaluation matrix that I came across. I read the Harvard Business Review pretty extensively. They had that one of their books was on generative AI. And 2 people called Mark Sanders and Mark Ramos created this matrix that basically tries to balance risk and reward. And they start out with saying you need to ask 2 questions. The first question is, how damaging would it be if untruths and inaccuracies were generated and disseminate it. So meaning I'm going to start using it, and we know that large language models can hallucinate. What would the impact of that be, right? So that's the risk. You need to understand that, what the risk is there. Then secondly, what is the real and sustainable need for this kind of output, so this kind of functionality beyond the current buzz and the hype cycle, right? I mean, that's important as well. So what they did was they created a little matrix that basically put on the x-axis, which is the risk, and on the y-axis demands. And they kind of look at, and what they're saying is like, look, at this point, you should be working in the high demand, low risk quadrant, and leave the rest alone for now. So to give you an example, what is high demand, low risk? Every university has a marketing department, communications department, the training department. These are great use cases where a large language model can actually help you. We do it internally too.
I see what you're saying. You could, your marketing communications department, or in this case, I think you mentioned professional development that's inside the school for the staff, could start using this stuff and generate great content, great materials. So that would be high demand, low risk. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So what would be a high risk area, for example, would be business intelligence, right? So letting it loose on business intelligence and then assuming that every answer it's going to give is correct. That at this point is still high risk. High risk meaning, you can't just go out and start doing that. This really needs to be the deliberate approach. You need to validate the answers. You need to have guardrails around that, input guardrails, output guardrails, especially in the context of RAG. But yeah, that's a little framework. We'll share that framework as part of this deliverable.
So
not deliverable, the podcast.
EDUCAUSE is right around the corner. The big Alliance conference is just a few months away. If I'm a vendor and I show up saying, hey, we have AI built into our product now, and it's going to give you analytics and predictive this and predictive that, that's potentially something to consider in the high risk category, because how stable is that model to make those recommendations, right? Not that you don't buy, but you just got to go eyes wide open and consider that's a high risk area still today. Okay, just good to know. Just something for everyone to be thinking about. I'm going to invite Matt to join us because you've been listening in, Matt, on this conversation. I'm sure you've got a couple thoughts or questions. And also, for those of you that are listening in and watching, we'd love to hear from you. Some of you are sharing your thoughts in the chat, which is great, because every time you post something in the chat, you're getting someone else to think. You're getting their wheels spinning. It's sharing insight with them, and it really builds this really great momentum. So keep that going. But if you would like to jump on with us and jump into the conversation, you just got to let Gabrielle know in the comments, and she'll bring you up. But Matt, any thoughts from you as you listened in on Fred just setting the stage for us of the current state of the union in higher ed? But more importantly, what should schools be doing? What should leaders be focused on right now? And his primary advice is, look, get educated. In whatever role you have, learn it inside and out. Don't sit on the outside looking in. And then number two, start having the conversation around governance and how are we going to look at AI and treat AI. And then I want to talk about some use cases here in a minute.
Yeah, no, I love the conversation. And I think I always use the word opportunity. This is the opportunity for us to reimagine how we serve students, how faculty can engage with their students, how staff can engage with their community as well as their the students. And if you notice, William kind of put the light out. Like, it isn't just IT. It is the opportunity to create different experiences, reimagine the workflows of the future. But if we just apply it to what we've always done, we're going to be tethered to the past. And I continue to say, what do we need to do for the outcomes, right? So I think part of that is, what are we going towards, and how does AI help us? Everyone, every conference, every vendor, they just use the word AI, and that's great. But how do we apply it? How do we start using it? And the reality of it is, it shouldn't take us 12 months. Like, if you wait 12 months, you're already outdated, because there's already been 3 levels of advancements that you've missed out on, that you haven't tried on a campus. And I think that is the part that I keep pushing, is that let's get our hands wet. Let's start doing it. Let's try it. We're an early adopter inside of our firm, right? And so the way we used AI and the way we use AI today is different, right, Freddie? We're doing things inside of AI to make our consulting more effective. It's because we're trying it. We're failing. We're saying this works well, and then we try it. We try it in the way that we can approve the way our firm or our clients need to operate.
Yeah, I guess so. One of the things I'd like to work out with you, Fred, I want you to think of it as, let's say I'm on campus, right? I'm a functional leader on a campus, and I'm one of those kind of out of the box thinkers, right? I'm one of those risk taker types on campus, and you're running the IT department, let's say. Let's say I wanted to borrow your brain. I wanted to work with you. I wanted to figure out how to leverage some of these cool things that AI can do, especially from an outcomes perspective, right? A better student experience, finding ways that AI can help with retention or completion. How can we even how can it even impact enrollment on the front end, so students aren't abandoning the enrollment process or even the registration process, right? You think of all these community colleges around the country where it takes an hour and a half and 400,000 questions to even get into a community college, and most of these kids start the process and quit. Where can AI come into all those areas, right? Real outcomes that really impact lives. Okay. How would you advise me or a school on what to take on and what not to take on? I kind of hinted to the strategic priorities of the school, but like, where do we begin? If I've got some ideas, what are some first step, second step, third step of how do we get in a room together? How do we hash this out?
Well, I think look, there's several comments in the chat, and they're not incorrect at all. Look, there is the geeky IT stuff, right? But the geeky IT stuff does need to be in place so that you can make sure that what you're getting, the outcomes that you're getting, are accurate, are safe, are private, and ethical, right? Because so there is a geeky component outside of that. That's number one. Number two, realize that what generative AI is good at, it's a detangler of complexity. It can deal with a level of complexity that the average human and organization is unable to, right? Because think about what most organizations are in the business of, and what most consulting organizations are in the business of, which is there's too many rules, there's too many policies, there's too many differences. We need to go down to one or two policies, one or two, and it's not because that's the best solution. It's because you need to handle that complexity. So the experiments that we've been running internally to Beyond Academics is we're already seeing LLM without any special training being able to deal with a certain level of complexity that we know, and I know because I've ran IT shops, I ran enterprise applications that are better than the delivered enterprise applications today. With LLM, I'm able to give a student a class schedule over 3 years, over 4 years, at a level of complexity that I haven't seen any other enterprise applications being able to touch. I think that's number one. So number two, number three. Well, hold on, John. Number three, I think the organization needs to become very ambitious about what they want their student experience to be, because this is now a technology that can start to string together different applications and different processes to give the student a dynamic, intelligent experience, as opposed to static. Like I don't even want to use the word portal anymore for the future. Yeah. I think it's done.
Okay, so Brett, you led an IT organization in a community college, right, for quite a while. Mm-hmm. Give us kind of your experience so far. It sounds like it goes quite a ways back when you started to explore AI, but kind of what's been the journey so far?
So I retired at the end of June, and when I left, we were doing a lot with AI, but not the way it's been talked about so far. I think there's two uses of AI, right? One of the uses is to use the generative AI tools like ChatGPT to mine information and be able to find data and information quickly, right? Because all generative AI does is it fills in the blanks. It's a pattern solver. To us, the big issue was, how can this tool help make what we do more effective and more efficient? So rather than sending out, which community colleges do, which our community college did, we would send out texts to nudge students. Yeah. Every one of those texts directed them to go call someone or look up something to make a change. So, Fred, you were talking about earlier, the barriers that get put up for students who need to simply just want to get a degree. Those are some of the barriers. Imagine if instead of doing a text, the tool could actually help you, personal assistant, where the generative AI makes your interactions with the assistant more human, more lifelike, which for first generation students, non-native English speakers, can really lower the bar and close some of the gaps to help them get the information they need. So that's what we were doing. We were starting to look at use cases where, well, what if a student wants to find out who their advisor is? Perfect. Gen AI can do that. What if we find that out and we say, hey, Matt's your advisor. Would you like to make an appointment with Matt for next week? I can take care of that for you right now.
And Brett, real quick, as a former CIO, you know how hard that was in the old world.
There's no question. In the old world, it was almost impossible. But finding tools now that are more than just simple chatbots. So many companies claim AI as a part of their solution. Yippee, great, that's wonderful. But that's not what people want.
No.
People want to make the transformative use of AI. And so to me, finding a tool that's more than just an FAQ bot that can figure out answers, that's the future, that's the value. And what our approach is let's kick the tires. Because the problem is people all of you guys, right? No one knows what it can do until they see what it can do.
That's
so we develop 20 or 30 use cases by asking student affairs, what are the top problems you're solving? Why are people waiting 45 minutes to an hour to talk to someone at the call center by phone? And we developed quick, down and dirty AI applications doing that using a really powerful AI platform. And we were able to then sit down and say, what do you think? Then the wheels start to turn.
Of course.
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean,
so before we pick York's brain, thanks for joining us, York. Brett, as you were going through this journey, right? What obstacles did you as a leader face? Like, I'm sure it wasn't just smooth sailing. Everyone's like, oh, Brett's so awesome. Let's just do whatever he says. What were some of the areas where there were obstacles so that those listening in can kind of start to anticipate that for themselves?
I think the biggest obstacle we found, well, first of all, there's a reluctance to pursue it because a lot of people think this is going to replace their job, right? That's what you hear in the press. If someone's starting from that perspective, they're not going to engage with you in a conversation. So from the beginning, this isn't replacing anything. We may change what your job is, as every new technology has, but we're not eliminating why you're here. The second is people don't know what they don't know, right? And so we were finding that when we started to talk about the power of AI, they were doing simple things like finding information on a website. They weren't aware of how it can now engage in natural language conversations, multilingual conversations, to be able to find a better end game. So part of it is informing, but also inspiring. I think the role of IT is to inspire people on campus, especially at the executive level, so that the wheels turn, so that they can think in their own heads with what they know, but what they've seen, and then we translate those into how these technologies can achieve that goal. So Joe, I think that's the biggest thing is inspiration. They didn't get it.
To kind of build off of Brett. I mean, I've heard it referred to as interactive tutoring. Is essentially what it is.
Exactly.
I mean, we're at the level now.
So you're like the faculty in the sense.
I mean, it is. You have a PhD level tutor. I mean, GPT-4 has passed every GMAT, bar exam, everything. Aced it, 100%. I mean, you have literally a PhD level tutor to ask you questions. For instance, an example I like to use is the one of the apps that was built off of it was the pick of the refrigerator, and it would tell you recipes you could make.
Man.
Well, then you could say, maybe it saw a tomato in there, and you say, I don't like tomatoes. Well, it would then suggest something else. Obviously, that raised a few concerns with the DoD, as you can also take a picture under your kitchen sink, and you can then surmise, hey, I don't have aluminum. What do you recommend I use?
Yeah. Sure.
So and that was a completely unforeseen issue. We didn't know. And I think it's also important to remember that GPT-1, all we asked it to do was predict the next word. Everything else, it has figured out on its own. And I threw some dollar amounts just because I wanted to show, and Brett kind of mentioned this, that like we do not know. And when I say we, I mean even the programmers who built it. Sam Altman does not know what AI is capable of until we know it's capable. For instance, in 2017, this is like kind of an important instance. A chemistry grad student basically asked it a question and realized whoa, this is more than just regurgitating a periodic table.
Yeah.
What we came to the conclusion of was that, well, like, why did AI learn all of this? Like you said, different languages, all this kind of stuff to predict the next word. Like, that doesn't make sense at first. Well, if you think about it, my master's degree is in political science. It had to learn sociology, anthropology, how French people think different from German people. So it had to learn history. It had to learn politics. It had to learn all of this stuff to be able to predict the next word you will type.
Isn't that crazy?
And just to kind of put a point on it, and I'll let y'all go. GPT-6, the funding round has closed, $32 billion. One was literally Altman's garage with some heavy mining rigs.
That's right.
Two,
Matt, were you going to say something?
Million. We went to 100 million. Five got 10 billion. That's when Altman left, came back. Everyone freaked out. We're in an agreed upon pause at the moment, kind of. But obviously, everyone is still doing R&D behind the scenes and raising money. That's why 6 recently closed with $32 billion. So, like, when we say we don't know what it's capable of,
I think
really quick. We're 30 minutes in. This is what we do. We had to reset the room. There's 100+ people watching, streaming. So, like Clubhouse, we reset the room. So just so that you all know, we are the topic today is strategic AI planning, getting your campus ready for what's next. For folks that are on LinkedIn that are streaming, go ahead and put your comments. We can see it. We can interact with you through that. If by chance you want to get on to the stage like York and Brett, you have to come through our other stream, and we'll put that in there. But it's really for us to just have a really good conversation. That's all. I just wanted to, reset the room, Joe. And Joe, I'll let you take it back and then take it from there.
Yeah, Brett, I know Brett has a comment, but York, just to kind of put a bow on what you just said, you gave the example of being able to look at a refrigerator, take a picture, and the thing will generate recipes for you, right? So super cool. And then we start thinking, okay, how does that apply to higher ed, right? Here's a simple application I was thinking of as you were describing is, okay, so here's my course catalog, hundreds and hundreds of courses. Can we take a quote picture of it and it generate for the student a combination of the next year, 2 years worth of coursework? We know we can. Fred did that in Claude. Yeah. He just loaded a publicly available course catalog and said, here's my work schedule, here's my this schedule, and it generated the entire schedule.
It'll intuitively produce it for you, and then ask.
And then he said, and then Fred told the system, hey, oh, by the way, I work on Mondays. Within seconds, it reorganized the whole thing and said, if you moved your schedule a little bit at work, I can actually fill your whole schedule for you. If not, here's your other option. So, Brett, as you were listening to York, you had a couple thoughts pop in your mind. If any of you else want to join us on stage, please do. I did notice one question come in around security. So I do want to tackle that with Fred and both of you. So, Fred, maybe you have a comment and the guys can go from there. But, Brett, your thoughts as you heard York?
Yeah, just quick. I think you had asked earlier, Joe, about how schools could go about this. What are the obstacles? I think one of the other obstacles is that people think they've got to get it right, find the right tool, find the right project, do it all correctly before they go. This is an example where failing fast is the way to go. Yeah. Too many schools take the ready, aim, shoot approach. And this is the time where you want to take a ready, shoot, aim approach. I think
fast and break things.
Huh? Sorry.
Move fast and break things.
Right. So that's exactly it. I think find small use cases, set up some proofs of concept, let them work 90% of the way, right? Because it's a matter of trying these things in all sorts of different ways. People are asking about RAG and about, how you can take your data and put it into a language. Instead of modifying a large language model yourself, you can use the power of that with your own data so that it can summarize your data using its wealth of expertise, right? Go ahead and set up a simple RAG connection and try it. Create a personal assistant that gets schedules, that lets you pay bills, that gets information from your SIS. But I will tell you, be prepared that once you start doing this, you're going to realize that a lot of the other products in your portfolio aren't up to the task that you're going to want them to. They're filing cabinets, and what you need them to do is to be more integrable. And the only way you'll do that is you go, well, dang, how come I can't now have my AI assistant get information from this system? It's because the system's 12 years old and it's closed. time to rethink your portfolio that's forward looking. That's all I want to say.
No. Look, one of the things at the Alliance conference we're going to do is we're going to run 2 days of the C-suite experience, right? Where C-suite members can come and have these kinds of conversations. I hope you guys are going to come to Alliance because I think you'll be good fodder for some of the conversations that CIOs and senior leaders have. Because some of you have already started to take some of those risks and play. And I think some of your peers would love to kind of pick your brain much deeper on how you went about it. Back to you, Fred, real quick. On this issue of security, right? One of the questions that did pop up, I noticed, was how do we address security when it comes to PII stuff? What is this business about RAGs? How does that play into it? Kind of give us your thoughts, and then the guys can comment as well.
Yeah, so just to break it down really simply, so you have your large language model. Think of that as your engine, right? That's your brain. That's your processing power. A RAG would kind of be a mini large language model, but specific to your organization and controlled by your organization, right? So that's where you could put your proprietary information, the information that has, PII data and other data. But then once you build your RAG and have it interact with your large language model, you need to put in guardrails that strips out those PII information. And also, and it goes further than that. It goes, just the type of answers it'll give you as well. Make sure it's not toxic, make sure it's ethical, make sure it's relevant, etc. Those are all things that you can then start defining in the architecture of the RAG. And anybody that works in IT, and I apologize for all the folks that are on here that are not in IT, if you look at a RAG architecture, it wouldn't be that surprising to you, right? It's just basic enterprise architecture. But yeah, security is huge. It's so I'm a big fan of start experimenting, but there does need to be some thought. Okay, in this experimentation, am I exposing any data that I shouldn't be exposing?
Right. That's perfect. Okay. Yeah. Any other thoughts from you guys? Because if not, I'm going to have Fred talk a little bit about a couple more use cases. We talked about, hey, very low risk would be for marketing comms to start, using some LLM type tools, because again, no PII, that kind of stuff.
But I think Joe,
development.
I think Brett and York kind of reset the conversation a little bit. I think the chat kind of reset that conversation, because I think so. I'm pleasantly surprised that a lot of the people that are on this beehive are already looking beyond that, the low hanging fruit. So I think Brett.
So then the next generation stuff, the stuff that we're looking at, the stuff we're dabbling in and building, is more on student experience. So do you want to talk a little bit about student experience and some places of the student experience where we see this being impactful in the weeks and months to come?
Yeah, and I think Brett and York kind of hinted towards that as well, which is you can now start creating. A chatbot is the wrong word. They're almost like digital intelligence, a digital personal assistant that can and leaving aside again to what Brad said, some of your systems and some of your data might not be in a place yet where it's usable 100%. So that will be one of the things as an organization to prepare yourself for the future of generative AI, that you need to start looking at that, right? But assuming that everything is accessible, the data is clean, the data has been connected, you could really start to think about a completely different student experience, where the student will have basically a personal assistant that has dynamic interactions with the students, right? So you could start monitoring, for example, grades. You could start monitoring assignments. For example, before a student has an assignment, you can ask the student, hey, how do you feel about this topic? Right. And if the student says, yeah, I feel pretty great, and then turns out that they're not, it wasn't that great, the personal assistant can say, hey, okay, here are some resources in the college or outside the college, or even, it can act as a tutor. Again, there's a long way between where we are now and that future, but it's going to be there within years, right? And what we think, Joe, is that the legacy vendors, including the newer legacy vendors who create point solutions, they're going to have a very hard time dealing with this, because this can potentially replace a lot of the features and functionalities that your point solution enterprise apps provide.
And to Vistap's point in the chat, the risks go far beyond just PII. It's incorrect information loss of reputation. So one of the things that we're encouraging schools to consider is, and I think Brett hinted to this, is you have the intelligence of AI do the work, but you still have the human checking it,
Yep.
right? For a period of time. A couple of years from now, that may not be as necessary. But for example, we're working on how to make the student advisor relationship much more dynamic and much smarter. So the AI can take over a lot of the advisor's work today to free up the advisor to do more meaningful work. But that doesn't mean the advisor is out of work. It
Right.
just means the advisor doesn't have to do all the brain dead stuff of building a schedule. AI can do it, but then the advisor is the one that approves it before the student enrolls, right? So that's where you kind of give the human that assistant and the student the assistant, but the humans still stay involved, validating and ensuring that it's all correct. It's always fun to have Vistep on because he's always got something super insightful, way beyond anything we can process. So Vistep, talk slow for me and give us your thoughts.
Sure, Joe, but you're absolutely correct. I mean, the challenge that we have is that we get so excited about what AI can do, is that we forget that it is doing exactly what a raw assistant might do, kludging together a lot of information, which could be correct or it could be totally wrong. And we need to stop trying to, let's say, anthropomorphize it, because we do that all the time. It's the equivalent of a person, therefore we give it human agency. And that's one thing we need to be very, very careful about. We talk about risk with
PIIs.
PIIs, but the real risk, if you look at a university, is not going to be PII. It's not that PII is not important. It's very important. But the real risk is that we don't check the information that we give to our students.
Right.
Or we let our faculty believe that what they're being using is going to be correct all the time, rather than that they need to check it.
Yeah. No, that's a
And I
great
think
point.
that needs to be built into everything that we do,
Yeah.
is that it's an assistant. It can be a great assistant or it could be a horrible assistant, and it's going to depend on how much supervision we actually give it and how much we're willing to check.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we need to be very careful, even with the programs that we get from our vendors, as to how much of it is based on the vendor's understanding of what we need versus what is it that we actually need. And there's a huge difference, not just because of AI, but even in, let's say, previous years, where the vendor believed there was something necessary, the university believed there's something necessary, the truth was somewhere in between. And it's not necessary that the university even knew what it actually wanted, because it didn't know what was possible. And I think AI basically aggravates that if we're not very careful.
No, love it.
Yeah, it's not a magic button.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
unfortunately, we think it's a panacea for everything,
Right.
that it can solve every problem in the world. It can solve it based on the data we give it. So it's garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah.
If there's a lot of garbage going in, which is unstructured data, and it's not checked, well, the results are going to be wrong.
One more, Matt's going to share a couple thoughts here. One of the things that William brings up, was a fun little question he asked about, hey, could this eventually someday replace the SIS? Matt's got a perspective on all that, on all the back office systems, right, and where this thing's headed. I know Fred, for example, has already thought it through with some Gen AI people. Like we can see an end to the need of an LMS in its current use case. Based on where Gen AI is headed, right? So yeah, there's a distinct possibility that years down the road. But the big takeaway for me from Vistep's conversation is, let's add another to-do item on every school's list is, hey, how do we think about how AI is going to more assist for now and not replace, right? If you're looking at a replacement strategy, there's greater risk than if you look at an assistant strategy, whether you're talking about a professor, an administrator, a student. It's the AI assistant that's the game changer coming up. Matt, your thoughts?
Yeah, and William teed me up right on the
Yeah, he did.
of the world. So the reality of it is we're going to need SISs because they're a system of record keeping, right? That's what registrars, that's what financial aid directors, admissions, that's what they're doing. They're record keeping, right? And I had this conversation with one of our clients just yesterday, and I gave them the example. The SIS of today, we design prerequisites. Well, that prerequisite is designed for how to determine who gets into classes and so forth. But the reality of it is, once we start loading information and you allow the system to be intelligent to read it just like humans, right? And Brett in the back of the studio is talking. I'm going to bring him up in a second. Has said, you know what? We worry about AI doing it wrong when humans are kind of doing it wrong all the time. They're making the wrong decisions. I'm going to bring you up in a second, Brett. But I want us to recognize that the SIS today is great for today, and maybe you might add AI to do what you do today better. But the concept of like just putting AI to do prerequisites, because right now I configure prerequisites in a system, I won't need to configure prereqs because the intelligence will do the logic of that configuration. That's when SISs will become less and less like transactional in the way that we process it. We will start to use SIS as just a place to load your transcript, load things out, and that's what we're going to be driving. And I'm not scaring anyone not to go into cloud, not to buy a product. Like, go and do all the things you need to do, but recognize that you could probably do a lot of things that the SIS hasn't done yet with the new AI side of the world and things like that. So I just wanted to bring that up. And Brett, I saw that in the backstage you were having that conversation about there's so much fear around AI. There's fear about cheating. There's fear that it's not going to give you the right responses. I can't tell you the number of times I had to look at a waiver because our human didn't do it right? And we lived with it. So we got to understand, how do we improve that every time? Brett, go ahead and drive into that.
Just two quick things. I think it's romantic in a way that when we started to move data centers to the cloud, people kept saying, oh, no, it's not going to be secure. It was always so romantic for them to think that just because it was on our campus, it was inherently more secure than something in the cloud. I think the same fear applies to AI. There's some issue about people seem to think that the human is somehow better at this necessarily than the technology, the AI, even though they're looking at the same sources. I think I want to get back to something you guys were talking about earlier. I think Fred was saying this too. And I think one of the roles that's going to evolve in our systems is many of the systems are great at maintaining the data, the relationships between the data, and all of that, but they're terrible at the user experience.
Right.
So I think a lot of these tools are quickly going to find a way of replacing the user interface for a lot of the kinds of solutions that are there. Fred, you had talked about this earlier, right? This notion of the single pane of glass that will give you access. I mean, it's the same data that your call center agents, your financial aid agents, all of them have access to. It's just now presented in a natural human way to be able to present the information. And I think the role of the humans is going to be focusing on those places where they add significant value, not where their simple role has been to be the mediator between the customer, the student, or the faculty member, and the system that has the data that they need to use. If that's all that the human's been doing, that I think is early replaceability kind of things. But then the staff get to focus on the really complex issues. You know, Matt, the thing you said, don't worry about let's getting something wrong. Let's find out a student who's got a very complicated solution and now have the time to really work with them to get them through that so they know where they need to go.
Yeah, that's right. That's well said. Fred and Matt, thoughts from you as others keep posting their thoughts and comments. And again, if you'd like to join us and share some of your thoughts, just raise your hand in the chat. We'd love to have you come up and share your thoughts. We've got another 11 minutes or so to go, or 10 minutes before we start winding down today's session.
I think we're getting a perfect representation of the audience, right? We have very tactical insight, also strategic to a certain extent, and then you have a former president of Vistap who say, hey, but wait, you know, if something goes wrong reputationally for an organization, that's a big deal, right? I just use, you know, a data breach, for example, just a regular data breach today. That has a reputational impact, right? So I know I think both perspectives are very important, and that's why having a governance strategy, a living governance strategy that can deal with that complexity is very important.
So really quick, we have Nura, and I think she's in the. Did she just drop? Okay, she might have dropped. Sorry, Freddie. I was going to bring up Nura, but she dropped. So.
No problem.
But Brett, we are experimenting with that exact scenario that we were describing, you know, and the way we're looking at it is if we have a layer on top of all your enterprise systems where you can pull the data, clean the data, combine the data, secure the data, then what does that open up from a user experience?
So we used to think these one-stop, students used to have to go to different offices to find solutions that were based upon how we chose to organize those offices, not by the problems they solved, right? So they had these one-stop centers so the student come and get one help. Our systems are still doing that, right? Your course information is in the LMS, and your student information is
I got to
here.
log in and log in and log in.
Right. What I think this does is it can democratize and make it easier, Fred, to create that single pane of glass in a way that people want to interact. They want to have a natural conversation to be able to do this. And I think this gives us the layer over those underlying systems. I don't think those systems are going away. You still need to have the data and the connections between the data. What'll change is how we access the data. I want to be in my car realizing I have an issue and be able to make a phone call quickly to get it instead of having to stop, go to the website, click on the link, log in, right? There's got to be better ways to do that. I think
Brett, one of the things Matt, I hear Matt say all the time is, look, when I hail an Uber ride, I don't know that there's probably 50 different systems behind the scenes, and I have one user experience, right? And that's kind of where I think higher ed should be by next year this time. There's no reason it can't be. Matt, we've got to recruit Brett to join our advisory team for the single pane of glass.
Yeah, Brett and I actually had a conversation right before this. I invited him to this conversation, so I'm really glad he joined us. So I think there's a shift, right? AI is going to move a campus to become more proactive than reactive. That's the first thing. If you want to really improve your campus, the first thing you have to recognize is that you cannot be reactive anymore. You have to be proactive. And so AI will let you do that. And I love what Brett said. That single pane of glass is the holy grail of where higher ed needs to go, should go, and the investments should go. I think, do we need robust ERP, SIS, CRM, LMS? Sure, totally need it. That's how things need to be managed. There's back-end transactions, algorithms, you name it. But you will start to see that there's a front pane of glass that is proactively pushing you and nudging you to the outcomes that is specific to each of us, not to the 30 people in the class. I'm getting the mass email. No, you may get 30 different emails coming out of that class because that student reacted somehow in that classroom, in their exam. And that's the proactiveness on the learning enterprise side. So we're excited that that's the possibility that we're going to have. If we're, and I said this, we're seeing a lot of chatter about AI being on different vendors' platforms, and I want to shake, give everyone a kudos for that. But if you're only applying it to the transactional things you do up to yesterday and today, you're just improving outdated processes from the 90s. We have to think about how do we improve our advising, how do we improve our proactive community as higher ed will become, and that's going to be a big driver.
So I think a way to get at this is we used to always think the holy grail was predictive analytics, right? Figuring out what's next. Yeah. I actually think that's been a mistake. Mm-hmm. I think prescriptive is where we really want to go. Don't have this. The systems used to only be smart enough to be able to figure out what's up with Joe or what's up with Fred. Now the systems with AI and natural language and all of that, now they can be prescriptive. So without any human intervention, you could say if a student is getting 2 or more C's or turning in 3 or more assignments late in Canvas, how about making a phone call to them from the AI bot saying, hey, this is the mascot of your institution calling. We see that is there anything we can do to help? Are you having any issues, right? And then get them the help they need in an engaging, interactive way. I think you're right. The future is not just the pane of glass, but being proactive and prescriptive.
And of course, it's going to be multi-sided, right? So it's not just the students pane of glass.
Yeah.
The administrator,
every
the faculty
have their pane of glass.
You haven't done your open enrollment here. Can I take you to the forum and let's go ahead and fill this out? That's correct. I think that's great.
Before we start to wind down, a couple of things I want to remind everyone of. The Alliance Conference next year, please plan on coming. Go beg your boss for the resources. It's going to be phenomenal because there will be lots of AI discussions there, a lot of them peer-to-peer led. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of sessions that schools will be presenting to each other and what they're doing. And then on main stage, we'll certainly make this a featured area of conversation, both in main stage as well as in the C-suite group. So just want to make that plug for sure. Here's my recap, guys and gals, as I've been listening to you, watching you in the chat, hearing you on the stage. Here's some recap points. Number one, AI is here and it's moving fast. So that's my first operative word, the speed it's moving at. So it's important that all of us be learning, depending on your role. Take the time, invest the time to learn about this stuff and start thinking about use cases of AI in the world you live in. If you serve students, if you serve staff, if you serve faculty, whatever your role is, look at your everyday experiences, what your phone is doing, what your Uber app is doing, what your shopping carts are doing, what your delivery services are doing, and start thinking about what the application of that in higher ed. Because if it's working with your grocery deliveries and with your car rides, that means the technology is currently there and available for us to use in higher ed. It may not have been applied to higher ed yet, but it's available, quote unquote, off the shelf. It's all of us coming together to brainstorm and then start building some of these solutions together. So it's moving fast. Make sure you're learning. Start having the conversation. This is the big thing Fred encourages in our podcast is start having the conversation on your campus about these things. Get people together, fight, argue, and bicker, whatever it is, but start getting the conversation going. Think about governance, talk about security, but get excited about the future and don't look at AI as this scary monster. Ask yourself, how can we leverage it better? And then start to try, like Brett was saying, just start with small little use cases, fail fast. You'll learn so much, it'll build momentum, and you'll be better prepared for what's coming. I really believe, and Matt and Fred agree, and we've talked about this before, the best part of AI, as we know it so far, is sometime mid next year. We're going to see some really cool, never been heard about products hit our market, not the stuff we're going to see at the conferences this year, because it's too early for them to have built anything really great so far. But by next summer-ish, I think we're going to see some really amazing stuff hit the market, so get excited about that. With that said, I'm going to hand it back over to Gabrielle to kind of recap, close us out, give us some closing instructions. If you don't mind, Gabrielle, throw up that QR code to Fridays with Freddie. It'd be fun to have more people join us in that conversation.
Of course. I will definitely go ahead and put that in the chat. And for those of you who are listening, we did put the Alliance information in the chat. But for those of you who are audio on this, I just want to let you know that Alliance 2025 will be March 9th through the 12th in New Orleans. And we'd love to see you there. So I apologize if I said New Orleans the wrong way. I can never really quite get it right. New Orleans, whatever it is. So you go ahead and correct me in the chat. And we are so excited to have you there. Please feel free to drop any closing thoughts in the chat. If you'd like to, reach out to us, discuss anything, we are on LinkedIn. And we're just so thankful to the Hug for putting this session together with us and being our partner.
Sounds great. And William, yes, I do believe huge opportunities in K through 12, but I think they move slower than higher ed, if that's even possible. So I think we have to be the innovators in higher education and then bring K through 12 along.
And Joe, maybe I can add one final comment. This is going to be a shock. This is going to come as a shock to a lot of people at the college level. But if you're looking for AI experts, you're probably teaching them already. So there's tons of students
are smart.
There are lots of students that are doing AI. We ourselves, we use on-demand resources from all over the world that are fairly cheap. So if you're waiting because you don't have the expertise, you probably already have it internally somewhere. If not, you can get external help as well.
My closing thought would be for people who are here is you've already interested, you've already come, you're already being a part of a conversation. I would encourage all of you to go back to your institutions, no matter whether you're in IT or on the functional side, continue this conversation with everybody else, right? Leverage the enthusiasm you had by coming and doing this today to start those critical conversations about just forget worrying about the details of the technology. Just know that there's this thing that can help. Conversations about what processes, what systems need the help that this thing may be able to help us with.
Well said. And with that, we'll sign off, Matt, and you'll close us out.
Yeah, I think it's a really good, the Hug, as for the folks that don't know the Hug's history, the Hug was built on a new technology and everyone coming together to try to figure out how to put that technology in. It happened to be ERP and SIS in the PeopleSoft ecosystem, and that's how it was built. You got to think of AI as a part of this new ecosystem, that if you come together and you start to become a collective community, you will start to drive the design of the ed tech. And those ed tech shouldn't take you 12 months to get you a product line. Why? Because they should be using it in industry already, and we should be designing to it. And we should design it to the future of higher ed, not of the past, not of how my admissions office runs today. We should be designing to a future-ready campus that is thinking about tomorrow. And if we do that collectively, we're going to be a really good community that is going to serve our students, faculty, and staff as we go. So
awesome. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Brett, and everyone else who contributed. We'll see you all next time. Have a great rest of your week.